Hey guys, hope you're well. So this is another video for any Muslims who may be doubting Islam, and I want to let you know I'm up front. I'm an ex-Muslim, but the goal of this video is not to encourage you to turn away from Islam. My encouragement actually is to help you reinterpret Islam, because if you're having doubts, but you haven't left the religion, let's say perhaps you still believe there's truth, you still believe there's value in the religion, or the religion has a great emotional resonance with you. It has a lot of meaning with you. You find a lot of benefit, and you find a lot of pleasure in a lot of the rituals or the structure of the religion. It doesn't mean you need to turn away just because you're seeing any doubts. So what this is just hopefully encouragement to question the religion and to come up with new interpretations. And I'm sure you've heard of the concept of bid'ah, innovation, right? I'm gonna try to quell that fear of bid'ah. Okay, so first of all, what I'm gonna say is I'd advise you to check out the work of Tom Holland. Tom Holland is an historian, and he came up and he has a book called Shadow of the Sword. Yeah, that's what it is. And it's a book about the history of the origins of Islam. And he has a documentary called Islam, the Untold Story, which is also about the history of Islam. And in the book, I haven't read the book, I've just read reviews, I've watched the documentary, I have the book, I just haven't read it yet. In the book he argues that there's a murky history to the early days of Islam, to actually what Islam was, to actually the history of Islam, that if you go to secular sources that don't have a vested interest in propagating the story of Islam, vested to secular sources, Islam doesn't really appear much spoken about until like 60 years after Muhammad's death, and doesn't really become popular maybe a century or two after Muhammad's death. And so what he's arguing, and what I would argue, is that Islam was largely created by an elite. And by an elite, what I'm talking about is before the advent of the printing press, which I think from memory was around about 17th or 18th century, a minority of the population could read and write. The majority of the population were illiterate. Doesn't mean they were not intelligent or didn't have knowledge of things, etc. But they could not read or write. So the only way you could really get knowledge is by literally physically walking up to people and listening to them, or having conversations with people. There was no idea that you could just sit down with a bunch of books and learn things, which is a very fast way of a relatively quick way of passing on information. So the people who would have access to Hadith and other aspects of Islam and interpretations were people who could read or write, and they were a very small minority of human beings on the planet, let alone Arabia. So these are the people who really shaped the religion. And what Tom Holland seems to argue is that there were political and military tensions within the area. So perhaps that's one of the reasons why there is a lot of talk about military conquest and need for religious solidarity on the basis of being a Muslim, and fighting against people who were non-Muslim, because apparently there were tensions between non-Muslim Persians and the Romans at the time and in the areas, and it had been threatened by different tribes. So perhaps that's one of the reasons why the elite emphasize things like war and things like this. And I think that makes far more sense than what I've seen regarding Hadith, regarding Muhammad. Because if you look at the Hadith, in my opinion, Muhammad looks almost like he has multiple personality disorder, or whatever the term is now. In one hand, he can display, I think, incredibly beautiful acts of kindness, wisdom, patience, forgiveness. Beautiful. I generally think is still beautiful to this day. Some of the sayings I think are beautiful. And on the other hand, he can advocate savagery, like literally ordering the torture of people to death. People had their eyes put out and were made to be left on rocks to the point that they starved to death in heat. Advocated things like that. The killing of people, beheading of people in the tribe, and advising his companions on how to have sex with, and I do that in air quotes because most women would not voluntarily want to have sex with their slave masters. If somebody slaughtered people in your family or village, took you from that place and enslaved you, took away your freedom, would you want to voluntarily have sex with that person? Probably not. So if they are having sex with their slaves, it's probably just rape. Okay, so and he would do things like that, and it was like multiple personalities. So it's like, how can this kind of character coexist in one person? And I'm arguing that it probably didn't. It's probably, as I said, different people shaping things, their own narrative. When you so you have Muhammad as this very stern, incredibly violent general, and then you have him as a very pious, minimalist person, didn't care about money, didn't care about prestige, just advise people to be patient and calm and friendly and forgiving and this kind of thing. So how do these two coexist? I don't think it's, I've never known anyone that can coexist to that extreme from what I've seen in Hadith. Okay, so how does this relate to you, and what's my advice to you? So my advice to you is to try to look at Islam perhaps from a historical perspective, like look into Tom Holland and things like that. And also to maybe think that perhaps it has been shaped largely by the elite, and you may see beauty in the religion, and to hold on to that sense of beauty. And what I would perhaps consider is reading the Quran allegorically, looking at the Quran as a collection of allegories, just like other religious texts can be looked at like they're allegories. There's a Christian mystic, a Christian universalist mystic and theologian called Emanuel Swedenborg, who I really like and I advise you to look into. Not that you're going to become Christian, I'm not Christian, but just I think I think he has a lot of practical spirituality and a practical cosmology, quite a comprehensive cosmology. But what he does, he looks at the Bible, and a large part of it he interprets it allegorically, and I think a lot of the allegory that he's presenting is quite profound. He presents it as an allegory, and there is a tradition within Islam called esoteric exegesis, and that is a way of interpreting the Quran allegorically. So I advise you to look into that. And why would you do that, right? Okay, so why? I'm going to ask you on what basis would you decide what is true and what isn't true? Well, what I would advise you to do is on this basis, and I don't know exactly how you're going to interpret it, but this is for me a guideline. I've been looking a lot into near-death experiences. I find them really uplifting, and I think they're true. I think what I mean by true, I think the commonalities that they're pointing to of life after death, of God, of God's unconditional love, of that we're here to self-correct and go back to God and experience, to love and to learn. I think they're true. And I've also been looking into Emanuel Swedenborg. I don't necessarily believe that Emanuel Swedenborg's model of reality is true, 100% true. I believe there's truth in it, and I think it's very practical. As I said, I'm more inclined to look at the overall picture of near-death experiences than just Emanuel Swedenborg's way. But one of the commonalities between Emanuel Swedenborg and near-death experiences, and I think Emanuel Swedenborg articulates beautifully, is the notion that God, to connect to God, what you need to do is connect to qualities, or live in accordance with qualities, to have your intentions and your thoughts and to embody certain qualities. And the quality is love, to embody love. So the energies of love can be broken down or even like compartmentalized in a sense to like appreciation, kindness, generosity, forgiveness, compassion. To live your life in goodwill, just general wishing health and happiness on everyone. Like when that's your intent, when those are your recurring thoughts, that's you're connecting to God. Just like if you how you connect with other people is by sharing values with them and sharing experiences. So if you if you're connecting to love, then you're connecting to God. Of course, the higher level is to actually treat the love as a personality, as a supreme consciousness, which is God. And that's how you get the highest connection, is not only to try to embody those qualities, but also to have a conscious relationship with the consciousness, right? So, but what that says too, and it's a universalist path, and even Emanuel Swedenborg talks about this. He says, you can worship God and not in the sense of putting your head down or praying, although that can be part of it, but it's really about embodying those qualities. And he says that a spiritual life or religious life without kindness, without love, is not really a spiritual life. It's empty, it's a shell. And there's a lot of one of the things, a recurring theme in his theology is warning against having this shell of a religion, of talk about God and talk about the life of Jesus, because as I said, he's a Christian, or talking about these traits of love and kindness and not trying to embody them in your intention, in your thoughts. They're just things just to say, they're flowery words, or just things to raise yourself up. So what I'm saying by this, and the reason why I'm saying that, is if that's, and I'm guessing that's probably going to touch people, especially if you're, like I said, I strongly advise you to look at near-death experiences and look into your own heart. When that becomes your guiding, when love is your guide, when you believe that love is a core characteristic of God, when you really believe that, or you have some experience of that, because I think that's probably what is driving you, is this divine, this draw to divine is probably what's driving this doubt, to be honest. I think if you're having an ethical crisis about Islam, that can be the guiding force. So things that don't align with love, and you'll have to decide for yourself, using your own wisdom, what you think aligns with love and what doesn't. That, I think that's the driving force. So does killing people for leaving religion, or for committing adultery, or being homosexual, or or committing blasphemy, does that align with love? Does endorsing slavery align with love? Does does having an in-group and out-group, and not even in a benign sense, like, yeah, this is the group I resonate with, but you guys are cool, having a in-group, out-group, like us versus them, like trying to dominate, humiliate, kill, control another group, and I mean that even just socially. Even if you don't believe in jihadism, you can have a sense, and this promoted in some Muslim circles, that somehow you're superior to non-Muslims, right? You're the saved group, you're the ones going to heaven, these kuffar, these people. And it's not just in Islam, there's other groups like this, and it can be done on political levels too, is that kind of out-group that discuss, that look at those the other, right? Look at them. Is that in accordance with love? Is it in accordance with love to have, for God to send people to hell to be tortured mercilessly for all eternity? Or does it make more sense that hell is a place where you go if your mindset is turned towards hatred and domination and control and humiliation and manipulation and revenge, and you go there, but you can still get out. You can get out if you turn to God. If you turn back and turn into God can mean turn into the personality, or asking angels for help, or Jesus, or any religious figures, or trying to or paying attention to that one little grain of goodness within you, of divinity, and moving towards that. And on that level, I'm sure if you've ever been someone who may not have been very nice for a period of your life, I've had that experience, there's always been that part of you, I find, that calls you towards goodness or kindness, or says you didn't treat that person very nicely, do you know what I mean? But you can push it down. So basically what I was saying is that we sort of experience perhaps some of the remnants of hell, or even heaven, in our own lives. Why I just said that, not really sure. But the point I'm making is that try to let love be your guide, because love is God. God is love, as it says. God is love. I think God is unfathomable. God is beyond us. But one of the core characteristics of God is love, and that goodness. And God is goodness. What is good is God. So that can be the guide for discerning what is true and what isn't true. Whether you think something, how you can discern what in Islam, which may be inspired by divinity, and what may be inspired by an elite that are trying to promote a religion, or trying to shape a religion to promote a political agenda of cultural and military interventionism. So if you're having an ethical crisis within Islam, what I advise you to do is pray, and to turn towards love, and to really use love as your guidepost for shaping your interpretation of religion. I'm not even advising you necessarily to leave if that is not something that you're really drawn to. So I hope that's of use to somebody, especially because I when I was questioning my religion, it can be quite terrifying, it can be quite a challenging time. So if you're up at 2 o'clock in the morning perhaps watching videos about doubts about Islam, I hope that's of some use. And I'll post some links in the description box. And all I can say is everything's going to be okay. Take care.